I stood in the middle of the wedding hall, my hands trembling as I held up my phone. The microphone had been snatched away from me, but it didn't matter. The video was playing on the big screen, and there was nothing they could do to stop it now. Gasps filled the room. The bride's mother let out a horrified scream, the groom's father turned pale, and the people who had humiliated me just moments ago were now frozen in shock. Their darkest secret was out, and there was no going back. How did we get here? How did what was supposed to be a beautiful day for my brother turn into this? Well, let me take you back to the beginning. I had always been the quiet one in the family, the one who didn't demand attention, who stayed out of trouble. My brother, Jake, was the golden child. He was charming, successful, and loved by everyone. When he announced his engagement to Olivia, I was genuinely happy for him. Olivia seemed sweet, and I thought this was going to be a fairy tale wedding. But I was wrong. From the moment the wedding planning started, I was treated like an afterthought. Olivia's family, the Montgomerys, were wealthy and well-known. They had a way of making people feel small if they weren't up to their standards. My mom, bless her heart, tried to make me feel included, but Olivia's mother, Diane, and her sister, Jessica, made sure I knew my place. At first, it was little things. My name was left off the bridal party list. I wasn't assigned a role in the wedding, not even as an usher. Then the passive-aggressive comments started. "Oh, you're wearing that?" Jessica sneered at me at a family dinner. I guess comfort is more important than style for some people. I let it go. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But then things escalated. A week before the wedding, Olivia's mother called a family meeting to discuss last-minute details. I was invited, which surprised me. When I arrived, I was met with cold stares. "We have a special role for you at the wedding," Diane said, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I was confused. "Really?" Jessica smirked. "Yes. You'll be the wedding server. You know, carrying drinks, making sure guests are comfortable." My stomach dropped. They wanted to turn me into a servant at my own brother's wedding. Olivia sat there, silent, not defending me. My own brother, Jake, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. I forced myself to smile, pretending I wasn't about to cry. "I'd rather just attend as a guest," I said as calmly as I could. Diane sighed dramatically. "Well, if you don't want to be part of the wedding, that's your choice." And just like that, I was uninvited. I went home that night humiliated. But I wasn't going to let them break me. I decided I would go to the wedding anyway. I wasn't going to cause a scene, I just wanted to support my brother. But then I found something. Something that changed everything. It started with Olivia's phone. She had left it unlocked at a small gathering before the wedding. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't. But a notification popped up. A message from Jessica. It read, "Make sure no one finds out about what Dad did. We cannot have that ruining the wedding." I felt my blood run cold. What was she talking about? Curiosity got the best of me. I clicked on the message, and what I found made my heart pound. There were emails, receipts, and messages, proof that their family had been covering up a huge scandal. A scandal that, if revealed, would ruin them. I knew I shouldn't be looking, but after the way they treated me, I couldn't stop myself. I copied everything to my phone, and in that moment I made a decision. They tried to humiliate me. They wanted to treat me like I was nothing. Well, they were about to learn that I was not the person to mess with. The wedding day arrived. I walked into the venue, acting like I belonged there. People stared, surprised to see me. Diane's face twisted in anger, but she didn't have time to stop me. I walked up to the microphone during the speeches, smiling sweetly. "That was such a beautiful toast," I said, pretending to wipe a tear from my eye. "But before we continue, I have something very important to share." Then I pressed play on the video. And that's when all hell broke loose. The moment the video started playing, the room was filled with chaos. People gasped, some whispered in shock, while others covered their mouths in disbelief. Diane lunged toward the screen, but it was too late. The truth was out. The video showed proof of their family's corruption, a scandal so deep that it would destroy their reputation forever. Bank statements, emails, voice recordings, everything. Olivia's father, Robert Montgomery, had been involved in fraudulent business dealings, bribing officials, and even covering up illegal activities to maintain their family's pristine image. The evidence was undeniable. Diane's face twisted in fury. "Turn it off." "This is a lie," she shrieked, but no one believed her. Jake turned to Olivia, his face pale. "Is this true? Did you know about this?" Olivia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She knew. Of course she knew. That's when Robert himself stood up. "Enough. This is private family business," he barked, his voice echoing in the hall. "Not anymore," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "You tried to humiliate me, but I won't be silent. Everyone deserves to know the truth." The room was divided. Some guests were already leaving, shaking their heads in disgust. Others stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The wedding was no longer a celebration. It was a crime scene unraveling in real time. I turned to look at Jake. My brother, the one person I thought would always stand by me. His face was filled with conflict, torn between loyalty to Olivia and the undeniable truth that his soon-to-be in-laws were criminals. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Robert marched toward me, his face red with rage. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Before I could react, security guards rushed in. And that's when everything turned into complete chaos. Security guards pushed through the stunned crowd, heading straight for me. Diane was yelling something, her voice shrill and desperate. Robert, his face a deep shade of red, pointed at me and barked, "Get her out of here. Now." 2 guards grabbed my arms. "Miss, you need to come with us." I struggled, trying to pull away. "Let go of me. I haven't done anything wrong." Jake finally snapped out of his daze. "Wait. Don't touch her," he shouted, stepping in between me and the guards. Robert turned to him, seething. "Jake, this is none of your concern. She's my sister." Jake shot back. "And she's telling the truth." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Olivia's eyes widened in horror. "Jake, don't." But it was too late. My brother had finally chosen a side. Robert clenched his jaw. "You don't know what you're talking about. This is a family matter." Jake shook his head. "No, it's a crime. And if you think I'm going to ignore that, you don't know me at all." Diane let out a choked gasp. "Jake, please. Think about Olivia." "No," he cut her off. "I'm thinking about what's right." Then, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. The wedding reception was in full swing, laughter echoing across the grand ballroom. The shimmering chandelier overhead made the entire room glow like a fairy tale. My brother, Brian, was having the time of his life, his smile never leaving his face. His new wife, Sarah, was glowing, surrounded by friends and family who were congratulating them. Everyone was happy, except for one thing. It started out innocently enough. I was sitting at one of the round tables near the dance floor, watching everyone enjoy themselves. My cousin, Jessica, sat beside me, chatting excitedly about her latest trip to Europe. The music played in the background, and the clinking of glasses was constant as the servers carried trays of champagne. But then, things took an unexpected turn. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A group of my relatives, some of the closest people in my life, huddled together, whispering and occasionally casting glances in my direction. They weren't even being discreet about it. I could see them pointing and whispering with smirks on their faces. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just my imagination running wild. But no, it wasn't. A few minutes later, my aunt, who I'd always thought of as warm and caring, suddenly approached me with a glass of wine in her hand. She smiled, but there was a weird tension in her eyes. I wasn't sure what to make of it. "Sweetie, you look like you're not having any fun. Come on, let's get you on the dance floor," she said, her tone overly sweet. I forced a smile and stood up, but as soon as I did, she leaned in and whispered loudly enough for others to hear, "You know, if you just tried a little harder, maybe you could have been the one up there marrying Brian, huh?" I froze, my heart skipping a beat. The words stung more than I expected. But before I could react, she laughed, as though it was a joke, and walked away. I stood there, frozen in shock. Had she really just said that? Had she really suggested that I, her niece, might have had feelings for my own brother? The thought was outrageous. But what hit me harder was the realization that the whispers, the pointing, it all suddenly made sense. They weren't just talking about me, they were talking about something else. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from my best friend Lindsay. "Are you okay? You look like you're about to explode. Don't let them get to you." I didn't reply immediately. I couldn't. I was too stunned. But then, my brother, Brian, appeared beside me, his face beaming with happiness. "Hey, sis. Everyone's waiting for you to join the dance," he said, pulling me into a hug. I don't know, Brian," I said softly, my voice shaky. I wasn't sure if I could handle being around these people anymore. Brian looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. "Hey, whatever it is, don't let anyone ruin your night. It's your brother's wedding. Let's make sure it's special for both of us." He gave me a reassuring pat on the back, but I could tell he had no idea what was really going on. I forced a smile and nodded, following him onto the dance floor. As the music played, I tried to lose myself in the moment, but it wasn't easy. I kept catching glimpses of my relatives, their eyes on me, their laughter ringing in my ears. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being scrutinized. Then it happened. My Uncle Mark, who had always been one of my favorite relatives, came up to me as the song ended. He was holding a microphone in his hand, a mischievous grin on his face. I didn't know what to expect, but I certainly wasn't ready for what came next. "Ladies and gentlemen," Uncle Mark announced, his voice booming across the room, "we're going to have a little fun. Let's take a moment to roast the bride's sister, shall we?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. My heart dropped into my stomach. What was going on? Before I could say anything, Uncle Mark continued. "So, some of you might not know, but our lovely guest here, insert name, has had quite the interesting journey to this moment. And let me tell you, we've all been witnesses." The crowd chuckled, and I felt a chill run down my spine. What was he talking about? My face turned bright red as Uncle Mark went on. "Let's just say there was a time when insert name might have had a bit of a crush on her brother. Isn't that right?" Laughter erupted around me, and I stood frozen in place, my mind racing. The room felt like it was spinning. My worst fears had come true. This was what they'd been whispering about. But it didn't stop there. Uncle Mark wasn't finished. "Oh, it was all innocent fun, right? But we all remember that one time when insert name tried to, well, let's just say impress Brian in ways that were unconventional." He laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was cruel, mocking. I wanted to run, to disappear. My hands trembled as I tried to hold myself together. And then the most shocking thing happened. As if on cue, my cousin Jessica, the same one who'd been talking to me earlier, stood up from her seat at the table. She walked over to Uncle Mark, tapped him on the shoulder, and whispered something in his ear. The room went silent. I couldn't hear what she said, but it was clear something had changed. Uncle Mark's expression shifted from mischievous to confused, then to uncomfortable. He cleared his throat. Well, maybe that's enough for tonight. Thanks, everyone, he said quickly, waving off the microphone. The crowd murmured, unsure of what had just happened. But I could barely process it.
My heart was pounding in my chest.
I could feel everyone's eyes on me, and the shame was almost unbearable. What had just happened? Why did they humiliate me like that? And then, as I tried to keep myself from breaking down right there, Jessica whispered something to me that made my blood run cold. You know, they're all just waiting for you to mess up. They can't stand the idea of you being in the spotlight. But maybe it's time for you to have the last laugh. I stared at her, unable to comprehend her words.
What did she mean by that?
What was she planning? And what was I supposed to do now? The room felt suffocating. I had to do something. I couldn't let them think they could get away with it. And that's when the idea hit me. A plan started forming in my mind. One that would expose their darkest secret. Something they never thought I knew. But I had to be careful because if I made the wrong move, it could destroy everything. What was I going to do next? Could I really follow through with it? The night wasn't over, and neither was my revenge. The music played on, but I felt detached from everything around me. The room felt like a distant blur, and I couldn't shake the humiliation I had just experienced. I wanted to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how I would react. My cousin Jessica was right. They were all just waiting for me to mess up, to give them more ammunition to tear me down. But there was no way I was going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble.
No.
I had a plan, and it was time to put it into motion. I took a deep breath and excused myself from the dance floor. Brian was busy talking to a few guests, and I knew this was my chance. I slipped through the crowd and made my way to the back of the reception hall, where the private rooms were. I needed some space to think. The moment I stepped into one of the quiet rooms, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I leaned against the wall, my mind racing. What could I do? How could I turn this around? And then I remembered something. Something from years ago. There was a secret, something buried deep within our family. A secret that, if revealed, would shatter the image they had carefully built over the years. It was the kind of secret that no one talked about, but it was there, festering beneath the surface. I had always suspected something was off, but I never knew for sure until last year. I'd overheard a conversation between my aunt and uncle, one that was so shocking I had almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. But I hadn't. They had been talking about a family scandal, one involving Brian. I wasn't supposed to know, of course, but I had overheard enough to piece together the truth. It wasn't just a small issue, it was something that could ruin everything for them. And now I had it. I had the leverage I needed to make them pay for what they had done to me. I walked out of the room, my heart pounding. The party was still in full swing, but I was no longer interested in dancing or pretending everything was fine. I had bigger things on my mind. As I walked back into the reception hall, I saw my Uncle Mark again, laughing and joking with some of the other guests. His voice carried across the room, and I knew this was my moment. It wasn't just about getting revenge anymore. This was about standing up for myself. It was time to take control of the narrative, to expose them for the lies they had been hiding for so long. I walked toward him, my steps purposeful. When he saw me approaching, his smile faltered for a second. But he quickly regained his composure and gave me a smug nod. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice dripping with fake concern. I met his gaze, not backing down. "I'm doing great, Uncle Mark. But I think it's time we all knew the truth about your family." His eyes narrowed, but I continued, speaking louder now, so everyone could hear. You see, there's something about Brian that none of you know. Something that's been kept secret for years. But I think it's time I shared it with all of you. A murmur ran through the crowd. People stopped what they were doing, turning to listen. Uncle Mark's face drained of color, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice low and strained. "I think it's time everyone knew about the affair you had with Brian's best friend, Charlie. The one that almost ruined their friendship. The one that you tried to cover up by bribing him to keep quiet," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. Gasps erupted from the crowd. I could see the shock on their faces. No one had expected me to reveal this, least of all Uncle Mark. The room was silent for a moment. Everyone was processing what I had just said. Uncle Mark looked like he might choke on his own words. He opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. "It's true, isn't it?" I asked, my voice rising. "I heard the conversation, Uncle Mark. I know about the money you paid Charlie to keep him quiet. How you ruined his life just to protect your own secrets. And you thought I wouldn't find out." For a second, he looked like he might explode. But then, just as quickly, his expression hardened. He clenched his fists at his sides and took a deep breath. "You're lying," he spat, his voice trembling with anger. "That's a complete lie. You don't know what you're talking about." But I knew better. The truth was out there, and now everyone knew. People began to murmur, exchanging looks of disbelief. My aunt was standing off to the side, her face pale, and my cousins were looking at each other in shock. "You can lie all you want, Uncle Mark," I said, my voice rising, "but I'm not the one with the dark secrets anymore. You are." And with that, the silence broke. People began talking, whispering, their voices overlapping as the shock of the revelation set in. I had done it. I had exposed their secret, and in doing so, I had taken back my power. But even as the crowd reacted, I could see Brian approaching me from across the room, his face filled with confusion and concern. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice soft but filled with worry. I looked at him, the weight of everything I had just done crashing down on me. "Brian, I think I've just made things a lot more complicated." The chaos of the wedding reception had reached a fever pitch. People were talking in hushed tones, glancing at each other with shock and disbelief. My words still hung in the air, and I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. I had just thrown a bombshell into the middle of the celebration, and now there was no going back. Brian reached me just as I was beginning to feel the full weight of my decision. His face was a mix of confusion and hurt, and I could tell he didn't understand what had just happened. "What did you say to them? Insert name," he asked, his voice low but steady. "What did Uncle Mark do?" I swallowed hard, trying to hold myself together. I couldn't let the guilt take over now, not when everything was finally out in the open. "Brian, there's something I need to tell you. Something that's been buried for a long time. I just couldn't keep it in any longer." His expression softened, but I could see the tension in his body. "What is it? Please tell me." I took a deep breath and explained everything, how I had overheard the conversation between Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda, how I had discovered the affair, and how I had pieced everything together over time. I told him about the bribery, the cover-up, and the lengths they had gone to in order to protect their secrets. As I spoke, Brian's face shifted from confusion to shock, and then to anger. I could see the betrayal in his eyes, the hurt, but there was something else too, something that told me he was beginning to understand why I had done it. "You're right," he said quietly when I finished. "I had no idea. I can't believe this. But I'm glad you told me. I know it wasn't easy, and I can't imagine what you've been feeling." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. "I did it for me, Brian. For us. I couldn't let them make me the villain anymore. I had to stand up for myself. He reached out and pulled me into a hug, and for the first time that night, I felt like everything was going to be okay. The secret was out. The truth was out. And while I knew things would never be the same, I finally felt like I had taken back control of my own life. As the night went on, things slowly started to calm down. People were still whispering, but the initial shock had worn off. Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda were nowhere to be seen, but I didn't care. I had done what I needed to do. And I knew, no matter what happened next, I would always have the strength to face whatever came my way. The night felt like it stretched on forever. The once cheerful atmosphere of Brian's wedding reception had been shattered, and the air was thick with tension. I stood there in the middle of everything, trying to process what had just happened. The secret was out. Uncle Mark's lies, his betrayal, it was all laid bare. And now, the ripple effect had begun. Brian, still standing by my side, had that look on his face, the one of disbelief and hurt, mixed with the faintest hint of understanding. He squeezed my hand, silently telling me that, despite the storm, I wasn't alone. But even his comfort couldn't quiet the noise in my head. The gravity of what I'd done was overwhelming. Was it the right choice? Was this really the way I wanted to confront them? Are you sure about all of this? Brian asked quietly, his voice betraying his inner turmoil. I nodded, though a small part of me wondered if I'd made a mistake. The evening had been turned upside down, and now there was no going back. But then I thought of all those years of silent humiliation, of the countless times they made me feel less than. No, I wasn't going to let them get away with it anymore. Not this time. Yeah, I said, trying to sound certain. I'm sure. Brian sighed and ran a hand through his hair. I don't know what to say. I don't even know how to process all of this. I understand, I said. But you should know. This wasn't just for me. It's for you, too. You deserve the truth. All of it. He glanced at me, his eyes softening. I get it now. God, I wish I had known. I wish I'd seen it. I can't believe Uncle Mark would do something like that. The weight of the moment sank in. I knew it wasn't going to be easy for Brian to reconcile with the truth. He had looked up to his uncle for so long, and this revelation was bound to tear down that image. But we couldn't change what had already been done. All we could do was face the consequences, together. Suddenly, the doors to the reception hall opened, and I turned to see Aunt Linda and Uncle Mark standing in the doorway. They looked smaller than I remembered, their confidence replaced by a wary, almost defeated expression. The entire room fell silent when they walked in. Aunt Linda's face was pale, and she avoided making eye contact with anyone. Uncle Mark's usual cocky demeanor was gone, replaced by a tense, tight-lipped frown. They were both wearing their wedding smiles, the ones they'd been practicing for years, but there was something desperate about it now, like they knew the truth would never be far behind. Brian and I exchanged a look, and I felt my heart beat faster. This was the moment. They had no idea what was coming. Uncle Mark cleared his throat and stepped forward, his voice wavering. Look, everyone, we need to address what's been said tonight. It's true that there are some things we've kept private, but we're family, and we're going to work through this together. The words rang hollow. No amount of rehearsed speeches could cover up the fact that the secret had already been exposed. People weren't buying it. They had already seen the cracks, and now they were all waiting for the next piece of the puzzle to fall into place. I didn't give them a chance to continue. Without hesitation, I stepped forward and raised my voice, making sure everyone in the room could hear. It's funny how now you want to play the family card, Uncle Mark, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. After everything you've done, after you destroyed Brian's best friend's life, after you tried to destroy mine. The room was dead quiet. Every eye was on me now, waiting for the next words to leave my mouth. Do you want to know what's been hidden from you all? I asked, my gaze fixed on Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda. Do you want to know what they tried so hard to bury? Aunt Linda's face drained of color, and Uncle Mark's hands clenched into fists at his sides. But this time it was different. There was no more bravado. No more smugness. They knew what was coming. The truth is, Brian wasn't the only one who was hurt by this. My life was messed up too. And now you have to face it. I paused, giving the words room to sink in. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on all of us. No one moved. No one spoke. The quiet was deafening. It was Brian who broke the silence, stepping forward to stand beside me, his face hardening with resolve. We deserve the truth. All of us. No more lies. No more pretending. Aunt Linda opened her mouth, but no words came out. Uncle Mark was shaking his head, his eyes darting around the room like he was looking for an escape. But there was none. The truth was out, and there was no erasing it. We were wrong. Uncle Mark finally muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Brian turned to face him, his expression cold. No, it wasn't. You don't get to make things right now. You had your chance. You lost it when you chose to protect your own secrets over our family. The room was still and tense. Everyone could feel the change in the air. This wasn't a simple family argument anymore. This was the unraveling of everything they had worked so hard to hide. Aunt Linda took a step back, tears beginning to well in her eyes. Brian, I never wanted you to know. We were trying to protect you. We didn't want to lose you. I'm not the one you should be worried about losing, Brian snapped. It's all of us you've lost. All of us who believed in you, who trusted you. I don't know how I'm supposed to look at you the same way anymore. His voice cracked at the end, and I could see how deeply the betrayal had hurt him. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about everything they had kept from him, the things they had made him believe for so long. I stepped closer to Brian, my hand resting on his shoulder, silently telling him that he wasn't alone. And then I turned back to face my aunt and uncle, my own anger still burning. Now that the truth is out, we'll have to find a way to move forward. But don't think for 1 second that you can walk away from this without consequences. You have a lot of work to do to fix what you've broken. And I'm not sure anything will ever be the same again. Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda didn't respond. There was nothing they could say. They were standing in the wreckage of their own actions, unable to hide behind their walls of deceit anymore. The silence lingered, thick and suffocating, until Brian's voice broke through. I don't know what the future holds for us as a family, but I do know one thing: we'll rebuild. Together. But we have to be honest with each other now. No more secrets. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As the night wore on, the energy in the room slowly shifted. People started to drift away, the conversations quieter now, less celebratory. The music was no longer the happy soundtrack it had been at the start. It was all just background noise now, fading away in the face of everything that had been exposed. But for the first time that night, I felt like I could breathe. The weight of their secret was no longer on my shoulders. The truth was finally out. And whatever happened next, I knew I had taken control of my own story. Things would never be the same, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing after all.